Hi everyone, I just wanted to make a quick video here to talk to you about the new satisfactory grading policy that we put into place for this semester of spring 2020, and just kind of explain to you both the policy and what the implications might be for you, especially if you're planning to go to graduate school or trying to pull up your GPA or whatever it is. So let me just walk through this with you. All right, so what is satisfactory and unsatisfactory grading? Well, it's if you decide to do SU grading, you will receive an S for any grade C or higher, but if you got a D or lower, then you would receive an unsatisfactory. So an S counts the credits towards your requirements in your grades. The U would be the equivalent to an F, except for that it doesn't lower your GPA. On your transcript, your grade will say S or U, satisfactory or unsatisfactory. The credits will count towards your graduation if you get an S, and it won't affect your GPA either way. So if you were to get a C in the class, but you normally have an AB GPA, for example, it won't lower it. If you were to get an A in the class and you normally have a lower GPA, then it won't raise it. And the course materials are still the same for you, so you still have to engage with all the course materials. Okay, so what's new about this policy for spring 2020? Maybe you've thought about this before, but there are some restrictions on it that have been lifted by the university just for this semester. So first of all, satisfactory, unsatisfactory is now allowed for first-year students, which it previously wasn't. All these conditions didn't used to be true. For students that are on probation, you can select SU. For courses within your major or minor, you can select to do it as SU, which previously was not the case. For all courses, there's no limit on the number for this semester. Usually there's a limit on how many you can do for SU, and if you decide to do all of your courses SU this semester, you're welcome to do that. And then this semester, only students can choose their satisfactory, unsatisfactory versus a letter grade. You can decide which one you want to do until May 4th. And then individual instructors can decide later if they want to extend that. Grades, I believe, are due by May 13th for the moment, as long as that doesn't change. So some instructors might give you a little bit longer to select the SU versus AF to give you time to know what your final grade would be, and then you can make a decision. Others might ask you to try to figure out if you think you're on track for a certain grade by May 4th, or maybe you would already have your final grades for that class. So May 4th is the earliest you'll have to make a decision, and each of your instructors should communicate with you about what their deadline for that is going to be. And so you can wait to make the decision after you see how things go over between now and May 4th, and you can decide if you want to go for a letter grade or for satisfactory, unsatisfactory. I just want to talk you through a few things you might want to consider as you're deciding which one you want to do, just so you kind of have all the information you need to make this decision. Oops, let me move my video. I've got my face right here in front of the slide. There we go. On to the left side. Okay, so if you are a first-year student applying to nursing, you have to take your courses for AF to be considered for acceptance into the nursing program. We don't fully understand implications of SU grading for graduate schools. Some graduate schools require a certain GPA in your major. Some are going to look at a transcript and see a semester full of satisfactory, unsatisfactory, and kind of wonder what happened. Usually when you apply to grad schools, you write a letter so you can explain this was the semester that COVID-19 occurred, and so I did all my classes for SU, but we don't fully understand how that's going to play out. So that's something that there's like a minimal amount of risk in there. I'm going to talk a little bit about that more in a moment. So for example, like I said, some programs might require a letter grade for certain courses. Like if you're going to med school, they might require that you have a B or higher in chem or something like that. I think there's a good chance that coming out of this pandemic, this global pandemic, that people will be flexible about these requirements for students who have these conditions in place from this particular time, but we can't know that for sure. SU historically made your transcript less competitive if it looks like you have a bunch of SUs. I think under these circumstances, it's very likely that lots of schools will recognize that this was spring 2020 when people were choosing to do this. And then the other thing I wanted to note is that some universities around the country, including some of the best liberal arts programs like Columbia, Harvard, MIT, Wellesley, Dartmouth have moved to mandatory satisfactory, unsatisfactory grading, or sometimes people call it pass fail. So there's some precedent for this here. And what this means is that some of the brightest students around the country are going to be applying to the same grad schools as you, and they will have all their grades as satisfactory and unsatisfactory because they're not getting the choice. They're just mandatorily making all students take them for SU. So I think that there's going to have to be some changes in the way graduate schools consider these grades and some of their policies and make us exceptions for this particular time. So that's just something to note. But again, we we don't know what that's going to look like. If you are on probation, every semester is an opportunity to pull up your grades. So if you have a very low GPA, if you get SU, that's one more chance not to help you raise your grade. So if you think you can do well this semester, or better than you've been doing, then you would want to keep the letter grade because it will help you raise your GPA. And that's something you can also decide up until May 4th to see how things are going. If you get a D, you might want to choose to take the D over SU because otherwise that class won't count towards your graduation and you would have to take another class. You may choose you'd prefer to do that because you don't want to lower your GPA, but you also might choose that you care less about the GPA than not having to redo the credits, and that's a decision that you will have to make. You might want to keep courses in your major as A through F, especially if you're planning on grad school, for some of the reasons I mentioned before. And a lot of times, students will put on their resume GPA or GPA in major, and if that's significantly higher than your general GPA. But again, I think people will be probably fairly forgiving around the circumstances of the coronavirus. You should talk to advisors within your major or your intended major if you're a first year or an undecided second year student to see how they think satisfactory, unsatisfactory might impact you, especially if you're planning to go to grad school. But you should also recognize that they won't have all the information either. They don't know 4 years down the road how graduate schools that you're applying to are going to look back on this time and how they're going to consider people who took their grades for SU or pass fail. So you could ask them, but they also have limited information. So I think it is definitely a good idea, but keep in mind that everybody's making guesses here because this is an unprecedented thing that's happening to us. If you get a grade higher than a C, you might want to stick with your letter grade. I guess unless you've had like a 4.0 the whole time, you may want to stick with your letter grade because it will, help for a lot of students keep your GPA up there, and it will have a letter grade on your transcript, which up until the present has looked better, but now, it's unknown how people will consider this. That's all that I've got. If you got questions, you can ask me or you can ask any of your professors from your classes. They should also be communicating with you about this. Hope that was helpful. All right. Thanks.